here is a project manager? No one. This is good. Thanks for contributing to my discussion. Great start. I'm just going to assume that you're all project managers for being here. Who here has done any formal training in project management? Good. All right, we've got some people. Who here works with a team who have had the same level of formal training? A bit, yeah. And I guess in complex projects, you do need a bit more of that. What I tend to find in my experience of project management, can't hear me, is that whilst the project managers do engage in formal training, they learn the methodologies to enable them to, sorry, I'm competing with this guy, to enable them to execute projects in a very complex arena. A lot of the time, staff don't have the same luxuries, especially in small projects. So small to medium-sized projects is where I did my research. And what we tried to do, I'm getting no connection, so we'll have to keep going across, is the start of project management was really conceived in three key industries. So we had defence, we had construction, we had engineering. Contemporary project management, and many of you know work in different areas, find that the industries are no longer limited to the origins. So whilst the etymology was construction, defence, engineering, we find that people are running projects in finance, in sporting, in healthcare, information technology. And whilst such as information technology projects, there has been some adaptability, so key methodologies have been done for a bespoke industry. A lot of the industries are still suffering. They're trying to run projects using methodologies that aren't really fit for their application. All right? So that's a problem that we tried to address. So our problem was really looking at project methodologies and how do they apply to small, simple, medium-sized projects. All right? And what we found is that there was a big problem. The methodologies were too complex for what they were trying to do. And often people managing those small projects were spending more time learning the methodologies, understanding them, than actually doing the project work. All right? And as a heads up, project management is meant to yield efficiency. All right? So in project evaluation, you talk about efficiency. That's what we're trying to do. So if you're spending all your time learning and using a system that isn't working, by definition, you're not being efficient. So we looked at the needs of industry. What are the needs of small to medium-sized projects? And we found they needed simple tools. They had simple projects. They didn't need convoluted reporting systems, 30 pages of documentation for a chart or a brief. They needed something that was simple and manageable. They also needed something they could communicate to other people. So, you've got a team of 40 people. Do you send them all to learn PMBOK, Prince2? Do you get them out of the workplace? Or do you have something that they can utilise straight off the bat? We considered the alternatives. So we had alternatives. We found them to be either complicated, intensive training was required to learn the vernacular. A lot of them have got very specific terminology, or they were specific to a particular industry. So the ones we examined were the PMBOK, the Prince system. I mean, that is complication in itself. Sorry for the Prince kids. And then we also looked at the Agile stuff. We also found that alternatives organisations were using were either a bespoke thing that they'd created or nothing. They just winged it. All right? And I dub this intuitive project management. A lot of it is common sense, so they took that and applied it to their projects. But often that left in confusion, it left in projects not being completed because winging it is different for everyone. So if I go through and run a project using my intuition, it probably would work. But then if I have other people on the team all using their own intuition, we find that we end up at crossroads. So what we need is we do need a unified methodology, a consistent methodology for these projects, but we need something a bit more simple. All right, so for us, it was clear that the current problem needs some alternatives. We need a new way to approach this. Our solution, now I'm really going to compete with these guys. Our solution was to try and create a methodology that people could relate to. And we use the concept of air travel because most people can relate to that. And as a result, we dubbed it the airplane methodology. Like any good piece of research and any business you want to get off the ground, you need to do some needs analysis. So we went to industry. I mean, we went through the practical realm. We did the academic side, but congruent with the practical application. And we found out what industry needed. we consulted industry. So a bit of a quantitative analysis. We surveyed over 300 people, and we had a few short surveys which went around. This is an interesting one. We gave people 6 votes each for this survey, and they could attribute the votes however they wanted, and there are a couple of other criteria in there. We found the majority of people in small to medium-sized projects wanted something that was easy to use above everything else. They just cared about something that they could use straight away and get the work done. Because it wasn't about managing the project, it was about getting the results, getting the business improvements, getting the benefits in an efficient manner. We then conducted some industry validation. We actually went out to industry and we conducted a couple of pilot studies. So we trained organisations, we gave them a good methodology, what we wanted to do, and we gave them 6 months to 12 months to apply this within their workplaces. And this is a cross-section of different industries, so finance, IT, construction, engineering. A lot of the clients at Scope, we actually use them as guinea pigs, right? So it's kind of easy to get. The initial pilot study, we had 10 participant companies, and the second one we had a larger number. I mean, some of the ones from the initial filtered through to the secondary ones, so we had a larger group. The difference between the two is we actually made a lot of iterations and modifications based from the results from the first one. So the second one was a much more robust model that we actually presented. I'm actually going to take you through a couple of the findings we got from the test, and it doesn't blow up too well, but that's the limitations of using Excel on a big screen. When we asked people how easy it was to use, and this you've got to remember was in comparison with their existing methodologies. So we had a lot of organisations using the Agile, using the Prince2, using the PMBOK and their own methodologies. So we asked them to compare this version compared to their other one, and this is how we generate the results. The blue stuff is the initial pilot group, and the second one is the one after we've actually done some modifications, the second row of iterative testing. So people actually found it easy to use, which was our aim, because that was the number one response we had from industry. We want something easy to use. Relative improvement, so we looked at efficiency, which was the other thing, and in contrast with their current methodologies, especially pilot group 2, we actually got some really good results, and the qualitative stuff was actually really good, the feedback we got from the users. Ease of training, so how easy they could communicate this to their staff, how easy they could train their staff in the adoption, the use of this methodology. Next one is communication, and this is communication centred around non-project teams, so external stakeholders, contractors, members of governments, members of boards, steering committees, people who maybe don't understand contemporary project management at all. How easy is it to communicate where you're at in your project, your milestones and so on? And also why you're doing the things you do. And overall, the satisfaction was really good from industry. So we're hoping to do a lot more testing, and next year we're going to actually launch this so people can actually trial it, use it, abuse it, break it. We actually validated this on the pretense of we want people to tell us everything that's wrong with it. So we tried to disprove that this is a good idea. And the validation actually came through and said, look, this is actually a good thing and industry does need it. So some of the quotes I've actually taken, this is actually aimed at getting some qualitative feedback, but it actually turned into a bit of a testimonial thing from a lot of the clients. So I'm not sure if they know much about the research methodology, but I think they know more about writing reviews on Google. So this is more the trend what we got. But overwhelmingly, they said, look, this is actually great. It enabled and fostered collaboration rather than a directive approach. It promoted inclusivity, because for a lot of organisations, the project team felt a little bit ostracised. Look, we don't understand what the project manager's doing. We don't understand the words that are being said. Whilst we can play project management bingo, you played that game before? Yeah. Whilst we can play that at meetings, we feel a bit removed. So by using a simple methodology, they're able to contribute in the project a lot more. And I'm a big fan of the collaborative approach. So for us, we actually found, look, the solution these people want is to make it simple. All right, and that's how we address the problem. So, simple project management. I'm just going to take you a very quick walkthrough. There's nowhere near enough time to go through this, but you'll be able to understand it. What we wanted to do was have a methodology where people could relate to. So air travel was chosen, as said before, and I'll just walk you through the airport very quickly. We actually found, and this is surprising, more people, I'm one of them, are likely to jump on a plane. We're not going to question the technicalities. We're not going to ask the engineer to open up the hood so we can see what's going on underneath. But when we're impacted by a project, especially a change management project, we're more skeptical. So we're more likely to jump onto something that could potentially kill us than to be on board of a project that, hey, we might move our workstation from point A to point B. All right? We found that, fear is a function of uncertainty, and a project is a unique endeavour. So inherently there's going to be uncertainty. But if people could relate to the process, we found that fear diminished substantially. So that's what we tried to do with this whole approach. Every project we managed like a plane trip. So we just guided people through that whole process. From a program management point of view, they were managed and controlled from a control tower. People could understand that. Look, we need to make sure the planes get off the ground safely. They're in the air. They land where they're supposed to. We manage change, or I call it turbulence, just to sound cool, appropriately. Briefly, the life cycle that we took people through the journey. We started with the notion that not everything's a project. So before it can formally become a project, it has to migrate from an idea to a project. So we said, look, you're not allowed to come to the airport. We actually made some cool Lego models as well. You're not allowed to come to the airport until you can prove that the idea makes sense. It has approval in principle, and we're not going to call it a project until you've attained that. We then went through and said, look, you're at the airport now. This is where all the planning occurs. And this is really good. And I threw in the analogy of a lot of people are trying to build the plane as they're trying to fly it in project management. So we said, look, before you build the plane, before you start jumping on the plane, make sure you know where you're going. Make sure it makes sense. Make sure you've got a vehicle that will actually take you there safely and effectively. The flight stage should be the nice and easy bit. This is where you can relax, lie down if you're in business class, and enjoy the journey. But for a lot of poorly planned projects, this is stressful, this is crazy, this is bad. Right? So we tried to make this the safe part because we said this is the risky bit. The landing was all about the evaluation, the handover, the assessment process, which we went into quite extensively because from a lessons learnt perspective, I think that's essential. And I think our industry does neglect that a fair bit. Yeah. Look, if you're interested in knowing more, just send me an email, nick@scopetraining.com.au, or chat to me during the break, and I'll give you some more information. We are looking for more people to road test it. It's going to be a free methodology anyway, so it's going to be something to help out the project management community. So, I think that's okay for time. Didn't get in trouble. Well done. That's been me. No worries. Oh, straight off the bat. Yeah, the team of 3 of us that went through and designed it. I did a lot of the research because I'm the nerdy guy at work.
And did it happen after getting those research results or those survey results and understanding and discovering that simplicity was the most important thing, and then you kind of went on to design something very simple?
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, a lot of the times we do a lot of corporate work. So we do a lot of corporate consultancy, a lot of corporate training. And what we find all the time is project team members going, I don't understand the project management process. I don't want to help out. It's a stupid thing. When you understand it and it becomes intuitive to you, you're like, how can you not understand this? So we went back to first principles. And when I started my first project, it was an IT project. And it was like $5 million. Right? And I was 20. I had no idea about project management. Straight in to do my master's so I could learn about it. And then it made sense. For a lot of people, they don't have that luxury. So I said, okay, let's listen to them. So we listened to them, and then we did the surveys as a reactive thing. We said, all right, let's see how big this problem is. We had a fairly decent sample size, and we went, okay, well, it seems like a decent problem for people, and that's what led into the study. So we thought, okay, well, let's design something that's simple enough for them to use and see if they get better results. So that was a whole, I guess, impetus for the methodology. No, they can do too. It's okay.
I've just got a question.
No worries.
I love the metaphor,
yeah.
and I love the use of metaphor as a way of making sense of things. We do that in complexity all the time, but
Good.
I'm really interested in what happens when maybe the plane when it's flying has quite a bit of turbulence, or do you have things to help with the idea of turbulence or delayed flights? Something's happened in another place. You know?
Yeah.
Is there that works in the airport methodology as well?
Yeah, there's all of those constructs in there, and they're based on I guess the complex project management principles. But the analogies used are like turbulence. So when we have an issue, all right, guys, we're hitting in a patch of turbulence. Are we going to redirect? Are we going to fly through it, or are we going to abort the plane and head back because it's going to be too risky? Yeah, so we do have a few very simple countermeasures, but they're actually quite complicated. But we thought we'll simplify it down. Yeah.
So sorry. Stop when you go.
No worries.
Thank you so much. I want to give you the special thank you.
Cool. Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening, guys. Thank you. Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.